By the time I've done my scam, I'm already gone.
Now you're the lead guy, but there's several
Right.
other people involved.
I figured out how to get Social Security to issue Social Security numbers to people that didn't exist.
That's crazy to me.
Brandon Green, Michael White, Lee Black.
Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah, you always think you're clever until the judge is looking at you going, what are you doing? I created banks, satisfied the loan on a house, and I applied for loans at all the lenders at the same time, and they all lend me money.
So it's easy $400,000 you made.
I got your high school transcripts, I got everything. I then go in the DMV, I get a driver's license, I got a house, I got whatever I want.
Who's at fault here?
They'll be arresting me as Gary Sullivan,
The male prostitute.
the male prostitute.
Yeah.
He's a homeless guy. He's blowing guys for 20 bucks a pop. I don't know if he's got a driver's license. I know it's horrible, I feel bad. Stop judging me.
Are you at this point partying hardcore, alcohol, drugs, rock and roll, or no?
This chick's a maniac. We had 400,000 in a duffel
Wow.
bag. We're spending money like you can't believe. The FBI was waiting to catch me. Everybody had given me up. I mean, I'm too cute to go to prison. This is not gonna work out well for me. I know it's coming down. I'm just gonna pull out $2 or $3 million and I'm leaving. That would have been it.
You think so?
Nothing's changed. It's so ripe for fraud.
30 seconds.
Did you ever think you would make it? I feel I'm so close I could taste sweet victory. I know this life meant for me. Yeah, why would you bet on Goliath when we got Bet David? Valuetainment, giving values contagious. This world of entrepreneurs, we get no value to haters. How they run, homie, look what I become. I'm the one.
My guest today's got a special story, and let me tell you why I brought him on board. This is a man who, in 2 years, figuring out ways how to fraud the bank. He made $11.5 million. Eventually, he was on America's most wanted list, Secret Service specifically. FBI was after him. 3 years, they couldn't catch him. Eventually, they caught him in 2006. 2007, he got 26 years. He just got out 6-7 months ago, July of 2019. And he's got a book out called Shark in the Housing Pool, on the run with the Secret Service's most wanted list. Having said that, my guest today, Matthew Cox. Matthew, thanks for coming out.
Sure, no problem.
So this is you got a crazy story here, man. What's the story with you learning how to go up against the banks and make $11.5 million in 2 years, and some say 40 million, some say other numbers. So how did you even get into this business?
See, how did I get into business? I graduated USF with a degree in fine arts, which is essentially, I don't want to say useless, but I couldn't make any real money doing that. I have a learning disability. I actually tried my hand at being an insurance adjuster, got my 220 property casualty license in Florida, became an insurance adjuster, was laid off twice. That industry was not working for me. I had a girlfriend that had gotten a job working for a subprime lender, and she said, you're made for this. You've got to do this. You absolutely would be phenomenal at this. And the nice thing was all the paperwork was done by the processor. So all I really had to do was get clients, bring them in, structure the deal, and most of the paperwork was processed by the processor. So it worked really well. Like the first month, I think I closed like a couple of loans. Next month was like 4 loans, then it was 6, then it was 8, then it was 10, then they made me a branch manager. Eventually, within a year or so, I opened my own mortgage company.
So you left them, and
I left them.
Who were you with at first?
It was Eagle Lending. It was
Eagle Lending.
Yeah, well, they went under.
Yeah. Well, a lot of them did.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
some of them you remember, there was big names that you would remember.
Yeah.
So Eagle Lending, this is in Florida.
Well, this was in Florida,
Got it.
but they were in several states.
Got
yes.
it. Okay. And so a year later, you decide to start your own deal.
Right.
And what happens next?
I hired a bunch of brokers. I had probably a dozen guys working there. And the problem was at Eagle, essentially at Eagle Lending, really the first loan I ever did, everything looked great except for one piece of paper, which was a verification of rent. My client or my borrower had a 30-day late. My manager told me, get rid of the 30-day late. You got a loan, you'll make $3,500. If you send this to underwriting the way it is, you're done. So she actually pulled out a bottle of whiteout and gave it to me. Said, white it out, make a copy. So I made a copy. I mean, I'd never done anything wrong before. Made a copy, sent it in, sweated bullets for 4 or 5 days, went through underwriting, everything's great, loan closed, I got a check for $3,500. You know, it emboldened me, and the next guy, if he had made $55,000, he's going to get a loan, but he made 45. So if that 4 became a 5, we've got a loan. Well, I changed the W-2.
You still did that over there, or you started doing it
Well, I
afterward?
started doing it at Eagle.
Oh, at Eagle you were
At
doing
Eagle,
this.
but then
Okay.
when I started my own place, it just ramped up, and before you know it, all the guys working for me are doing fraudulent loans, and we just became a mill. I'm not saying all the loans were fraudulent, but a good portion of the loans were fraudulent loans.
When you were doing it at your place.
And
Can
we
I
were-
ask you a question about Eagle?
Sure.
When you were there, let me ask you this, because sometimes in the world, I was in LA, and
Right.
when I was in LA, I mean, Countrywide, New Century, you remember these guys?
Yeah.
Guys are making $400,000, $600,000 per month is what they're making. And it's no income, no assets, creative financing, don't worry about it. Everyone's got a 720, 740, all this other stuff. Some of the guys that did it right came from a place that taught the right habits. Some of the guys that picked up the bad habits came from a place that was very normal to have the bad habits. Would you say you picked up some of those bad habits from being at Eagle, or even prior to that, you kind of figured out some creative ways to make money, even as a kid in high school or coming out of high school?
Yeah, I know. I really didn't. It was definitely at Eagle, and it started with the manager of the store, and she was making money. She was closing loans. I was desperate to make money. I was desperate not to end up living in my parents' spare room, and I just slowly it just started creeping up on me. Before you knew it, it was just all consuming. I mean, and look, I enjoyed it. The fact of the matter is that getting over on somebody on the banking industry, on an underwriter, and kind of faking them out or something. There's a certain I guess perverse pleasure in that. You feel good, you feel smart, you feel sharp. Like, wow, I really did something. The loan closes, you make a chunk of money, and it just got bigger and bigger, expanded from there. And of course, my brokers are all doing it now, and there's so many people in the industry. Subprime was so corrupt at the time. Even when we got caught, and we got caught all the time. I got caught with a couple $1 million from a bank one time. Talked to the guy. It was Pinnacle Bank Corp out of Chicago. Talked to the owner. He called me up. He's like, look, clearly this is fraud. We pulled all these files. We got a couple $1 million. They'd already sold $1 million to Household Bank. And I'm sitting there saying, look, if you're trying to tell me that you want me to buy back $2 million, that's not going to happen. So we need to come up with another solution here. And he goes, okay, well, nobody wants the FBI digging through their files. He goes, so if we're going to go ahead and sell this $1 million to Household in a sale next week. So if any of them come back on us, just promise you'll help us get rid of them. And I was like, of course. The likelihood that they were going to catch that fraud 2 months or 3 months later was very unlikely. So of course that sold. And I mean, I got caught multiple times. Eventually a broker that had worked for me got caught and committing fraud, and she and her husband wore a wire on me because they knew I had been doing fraud, and they got me to admit things on tape. And so the FBI came in, they said, look, we're going to indict you. And so they indicted me. Well, I waived the indictment. It doesn't matter. Essentially they said, you plead guilty to this fraud and you lose your mortgage company. And so I said, okay. I mean, by that point, I think when the FBI came in, which was at a later time, they said that the mortgage company, they estimated it had done like $40 million in bad loans over the course of like 2 or 3 years. But that doesn't mean that that's loss. It just means that you got a $200,000 loan that you shouldn't have gotten. Mm-hmm. And they're saying that's a bad loan. That's $200,000 in bad loans. Well, you made the payments, or maybe you didn't, I don't know. But they estimate around $40 million. So at that point, I should have claimed bankruptcy, should have moved in with mom and dad, but I've got bills. I don't want to take a step back, so I decided to go ahead and escalate the fraud, and I decided to start flipping houses in an area of Tampa known as Ybor City, Tampa Heights area. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
It's a nice area.
Yes, at the time, it was rough. It was rough. I mean, the median house in that area was probably worth $50,000 to $60,000.
Got it.
So I go in and I start buying up houses. The problem with buying those houses is that the people that live in those areas don't have good credit. They don't have their down payments. They quit their job a week before the loan closes. And so you're struggling against your buyers. So what I decided was that if I could get around the buyer somehow to borrow the money against the houses, which meant I had to start creating the buyers. So I started creating my own buyers and creating synthetic identities. And I figured out how to get Social Security to issue Social Security numbers to people that didn't exist. And
that's pretty creative right there.
Yeah, it was. I want to say it was difficult, but it was really a lot of phone calls, and then it was just coming up with the documents, and it wasn't. It was complicated, but it wasn't. Once I got the system down, it wasn't that hard. Social Security will issue a Social Security number to a child under the age of 12 months old, without the child being present. So all you have to do as the parent is show up with the birth certificate and the shot record. And you say, my child was born, I never got a Social Security number issued, and they'll issue a Social Security number to a child who's 10 months old without seeing the child. And of course I would go in using a fake ID. And they would check the computer and they'd go, you're right. This child exists, but we don't have a Social Security number for him. We will issue the Social Security number and they mail it to you. So then I would go with that Social Security number, I would then order 3 secured credit cards, make the payments for 6 months, and suddenly I have 690 credit scores, 650, 710 credit scores. So I've got this perfect synthetic individual that can now buy my houses for 40 grand. So I'm buying a house for 40 grand. The problem is I would clean it up a little bit, and even if I sold it at top dollar for 60 or 70, I'm making 30 grand, 25 grand. It's not worth it. So the issue is you need to borrow more. I needed to borrow more money in this synthetic individual name. So I need to get the houses to appraise higher. So I was dating a girl at a title company, and she explained to me how sales were recorded. And of course, do you know anything about appraisals? You probably know.
Which part?
Well, like to appraise a house.
Yeah, of course I know what. Yeah,
Right.
Sure.
You need an appraisal. Well,
Yes.
the way they gauge the value of the home is they look and they find 3 other comparable sales in the area within 1 mile that have sold within 1 year. And so what I did was I said, okay, well, if I'm trying to sell this house for $150,000, I can't get an appraisal unless I can find comparable sales. And she explained that, look, if you pay the extra doc stamps on the sale, those recordings will not go for, they won't record at 50, they'll record at 150 or 200. If you pay an extra $700, it adds 100,000 to it. So now I'm buying houses for 50 and I'm recording the value at 150 or 200. And I'm doing it all over the place in the name of synthetic individuals don't exist. And this was the dumbest part, is that I'm naming these guys James Red, Brandon Green, Michael White, Lee Black.
Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah, Reservoir Dogs. And I thought I was so clever. I really did. You always think you're clever until the judge is looking at you going, what are you doing? Suddenly you realize, okay, that was a jackass move. My bad. But so I've got all these houses, and each guy's he's buying 5 houses. We're recording the values for 150 to 200,000. The appraisers, the banks I'm ordering an appraisal from a bank. Countrywide's coming in and saying, their own appraisers coming out, and they're looking at it, they're going, yeah, it's worth 200,000. There's a comp 2 blocks away here, 3 blocks over here. They don't realize I own all those comps in various names. I'm creating the market.
Can I go back on the title when you said you pay $700 a little bit more, the comps are going to favor you? Who helps benefit the comps for you? Is there somebody that puts bigger numbers? Who is that person?
Well, what happens is I buy your house for $50,000.
Okay.
And I close obviously at a title company that I know
Okay.
the person. And then I either would say I want a construction credit for $100,000 added to this $50,000 sale. So now they would say, well, that would make the sale $150,000. Matt, it's going to cost you an extra $700 in taxes. And I would say, that's fine, I'll pay the extra $700. Because it's 0.007 for every 100,000, $700.
So it's nothing that the title rep is doing that's
not
fraudulent.
no.
You just think it's going to cost another $100,000 on construction loan, 0.7%, $700. It's a $150,000 house, not a $50,000 house.
Or even if I bought it from you for $50, and I explained to the title company, let me record it. I'll bring it down there and record it. And they go, if they know me, they're like, okay, well, why? Well, I want to get a copy of the recorded deed. Oh, okay, no problem, Matt. I go down, I fill out the paper. I change the paperwork right then. I just add a check for $700. I record and I go to the clerk. Here you go. They go, okay, 150. Or oh, okay, it's 200. You added an extra $900. Jumps up almost 100. Instead of 100,000, 140,000 plus the 50. Now it's 190. So I'm doing that, and so the whole market shoots up through the roof. It goes from like the median price of 60,000 to like 190 to 200. I think by the time I was done, they said it was at 250. So, but all these guys are buying 5 houses. So James Red owns 5 houses worth 200,000 apiece that he bought for. He's got 200,000 in. I'm borrowing $1 million on these houses. So I'm borrowing $1 million on houses that I've got maybe $250 and another $100,000 to clean up a little bit. I'm making $600,000 or $700,000 for each one of these guys, and there's several people involved. So this is what we were doing.
There's several people. Now you're the lead guy, but there's several
Right.
other people involved.
Correct.
I got it. Now let me ask you, if you don't mind, let's go back to when you started your own mortgage company until you had that issue. When you started your mortgage company, what were some of the forms of creative financing that you guys were doing? Because I've heard many different forms. What were some of the ones you guys did?
You know, the thing is, a lot of people talk about the liar loans,
Yeah.
which you were mentioning. The problem with the liar loans is that typically the person still has to have decent credit.
You come on no income, no assets.
Right,
You still
yes.
need to have a 720 or 680.
Right. So if I've got some guy that works at Tire Kingdom who's got a 590, he's not getting a liar loan. But what I can do is I can get him a subprime loan if I can prove his income. So we would change his W-2s and pay stubs to say he made enough money, and we would fake his down payment. So I created banks online. I would make a website that said Bank of Ybor. And you could go to the website and looked at it. It looked like a legitimate small bank. And I had bank statements. And so if the underwriter asked for the bank statements, because you need to prove you have had your down payment in the bank for 90 days. So this guy who works for Tire Kingdom, who has bad credit and has been at 3 different jobs in the last 2 years, we would either fix his credit, fix his W-2s so that he made enough money, or we would say he worked at a place where he didn't work, but we said he worked there for 5 years, and some friend of mine owned the business and would say that, and I'd come up with the W-2s and pay stubs.
Got it.
They would verify his employment. Then we would verify his down payment was in Bank of Ybor. Well, there is no Bank of Ybor. So if they said, well, we want bank statements, okay, we'd send them. I had original bank statements. I'd color bank statements. They look perfect. We send them to underwriting. If underwriting called to verify it, someone would answer the phone. Bank of Ybor, how may I help you? Sure, hold on, let me get you Jennifer.
Gotta be kidding me.
Yeah, we'd get on the phone.
And the
Okay, let me
person
pull that
Bank
up.
of Ybor is internally working for you.
No, there is no Bank of
I
Ybor.
I totally get it. But the person that would answer, this is Bank of Ybor, they're in your office. They
Yes.
would answer Bank. That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
Okay. And back, they're typing as if they're checking to see if this guy's a real guy. Okay.
They fax over a verification of deposit if they have to. I mean, it seemed very legitimate to Countrywide, who would then lend $190,000 on a house that was worth $40,000, and we maybe put 10 into it. So you end up making $100,000 to $150,000 for each loan. And this guy's borrowing $1 million like this, so we're making a chunk of money.
So the other part, you said the what do you call it? The whiteout, the whole whiteout thing, which was
Right.
very big. I mean, that's what you did with Eagle, right? When
Right.
you learned the one time, don't worry about it, just do whiteout and change it. There was forgery, which you white out, put the signature in. There was what you just did right now, what you talked about. There was many different creative methods to getting financing done. What were some other methods that maybe you guys did or you heard about that was very unique that you don't quite often hear out there in the mortgage industry?
The stuff that I did is it's so over the top. You can't. It's like one of the things I did was to obtain financing was I would satisfy the loans on houses. So I buy a house it's worth $200,000. It's got a $190,000 mortgage. I'd create a false satisfaction. And when you borrow money from Bank of America and you get a mortgage on your house and it gets paid off, you paid it off. How does public records know it was paid off? Bank of America sends a satisfaction of mortgage saying, hey, Patrick borrowed $200,000, but he paid it off. Here's the satisfaction proving he paid it off. And then they record that, and now it no longer exists. It's there, but anybody who searches the title can see that that mortgage has been satisfied. The question is, when that document arrives, does anybody ever call at Public Records? Does anyone at Public Records call Bank of America to verify that they mailed in that document? And the answer is no.
Till today.
Till today, as far as I know. I mean, I've talked to a couple title guys. It was a couple of years ago. I talked to a guy in prison that worked at a title company. He said, "Oh, absolutely not. Nobody's verifying those because it's a recording system." So what I would do is I would borrow money, $200,000 on a piece of property. Then I would create a satisfaction of mortgage from the lender. Let's say Mortgage Warehouse, for instance. So I create a satisfaction of mortgage from Mortgage Warehouse. And I've done them from everybody. Bank of America, Wachovia, Countrywide, SunTrust, tons of them. So I would then go downtown. I'd say, "Hey man, listen, they mailed me this, but I called them and asked them what it was. They said they were supposed to mail it to you." And Public Records would say, "Oh, you're right, this happens sometimes." And they would go ahead and record it. And so the document gets mailed back to the person that created it. Well, of course, that's Countrywide. But they don't know. There's 40,000 Countrywide addresses out there, probably let's say 400. They don't know where they're mailing it. It says return to sender Countrywide, and then it's got an address. Well, I just give an address to a vacant house. So they'd mail it to a vacant house. I'd go a couple days later and pull it out. I've got it. It's recorded. Now when I call the lawyer's title and say, "Hey, can you pull the title on my house to see if anything shows up?" They pull the title and they go, "Yeah, you don't have anything on your house." Does a mortgage show up? No, there's no mortgages. Great. I then turn around and I go to SunTrust Bank or whoever I want, and I say, "Look, I need to borrow $200,000 on my house." They order a title. Their title comes back and says, nothing's on, no title on no mortgage on your house. Great, I need to borrow $200,000. I go, "Sure, no problem." They pull my credit. They lend me the money. I borrow the money. I borrowed $1 million, like 5 mortgages on my own personal residence, like $1 million on a house that honestly wasn't worth $200,000. I borrowed was it $900,000? About $900,000 on a house. Another one, I borrowed about $400,000 or $500,000 on a few different houses that were only worth to me $100,000. Got 3 or 4 mortgages on them, just by satisfying the loan, or by doing shotgunning, which is when you satisfy the loan on a house. So that I don't owe anything on this house. I probably do, but I satisfied the loan. So what I do is I turn around and I go to 4 different lenders or 5 different lenders, and I apply for loans at all the lenders at the same time. Mm-hmm. They all search the title for the house. There's nothing on the house. There's no mortgage showing up on the house, and they all lend me money. Well, they mail in their documents. So when they arrive, 2 arrive on Monday, 1 arrives on Tuesday, 1 arrives on Friday. All the clerk does is record it. They scan it, shows up, they scan it, they show it. It doesn't matter if there's 5 different mortgages showing up. It's not illegal. The clerk it's not her responsibility to say, "Hey, this is odd, there's 5 mortgages on this house." The point is that every closing I go to, I walk away with a check for $150,000. So now I've borrowed $600,000 on this house that's worth $150 or $200, and it's called shotgunning. So now I've got $600,000, I deposit it in the bank, I pull out all the money within a month or 2. I don't ever have to make a payment because I just take off because I probably did it in somebody else's name or some fictitious person. I've done that. When I was on the run, I did that over and over again.
So it's easy $400,000 you're making?
Oh yeah, it's like $1 million. I did 1.3 million. I did 900,000 one time. I did 400,000. When I took off on the run, I always say this, I had no money. I had about 80 grand. But to be on the run with 80 grand, that's nothing, the way I was spending money at the time. So I went straight to Atlanta. I got like $400,000. I rented a house, satisfied the loan, borrowed $400,000, pulled the money out of the bank, took off. But I didn't borrow it in my name, obviously. It was a fictitious.
Now, this is a pretty crazy stuff. I want to get a little bit deeper into it, but let's go back to the part where you're getting socials under the age of 12. You're going in, here's the ID, you give the fake ID, yes, we see it. Then they send you the social to an address that you're staying at. You use the social, you go get 5 credit cards, then you're building credit, you go to 680, 720, then you go get a house. The ID that you use to get the social, is that a fake ID that you're using?
Initially, it was that I was using fake IDs, but then fairly quickly I realized it was easier just to get the DMV to issue me the driver's license.
The real ID?
The real ID.
For the kid under 12 years old? Under
12 months old. Well, keep in mind, when I create their credit profile, I don't put the age of a 12-month-old or a 10-month-old kid. I put that he's a 34 or 33-year-old man. Well, even if it shows up in the credit profile when they pull it, fraud alert, Social Security number just issued within the last year. You know what happens? You know how many times I've been there when somebody's pulled it and they've looked at it and they've gone, that's weird. There's a fraud alert here. Really, what is it? And you trust me, if you're in a bank using a fake ID and the loan officer says to you, that's strange, that's not something you want to hear. I mean, it's taken everything in me not to just bolt out of the door. I'm already terrified. So I'm sitting there and then you've got the loan officer going, that's strange. And I go, well, what is it? And they're like, well, it says fraud alert. And I'm like, really? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, well, why? And they go, well, it says that your Social Security number was issued within the last year. Really? That is strange. And this is your social? Yeah. You've got my 2 years W-2s. They go, yeah, that is strange. And they go, well, and you've always used, absolutely. You've got my driver's license. They're like, yeah, okay, yeah, that's weird. Okay, so anyway, they just keep right on going. I've never once had a loan turned down because
How many times has this happened?
That's happened a few times, 2 or 3 times.
2 or 3 times this has happened.
Yeah, they could have done anything. They could have called, I think there's uscitizen.gov, which verifies your social, date of birth, and everything else. They could have done anything. They just went, I mean, I have so much documentation, and there are lots of fraud alerts that come up. Every time you alter your name in any way, it says fraud alert. Because it'll say Matt B. Cox, Matthew B. Cox, fraud alert, 2 different names.
Got it.
Or, M. Cox, fraud alert. Well, this is the date of birth, and it doesn't really have it just says issued recently. It doesn't seem right because I pulled his credit, and on the credit report, although it does say fraud alert issued, but then it also says that his date of birth is 1971 or 1969. So that doesn't make sense. So they disregard it right away because you're sitting there in front of them, and I'm a clean-cut guy, and I don't appear to be nervous or leaving. So I have all the right documents, and if you need to talk to your loan or your boss or whatever, we need to get this taken care of. Let's get going. Yeah, I'm good, thanks. They just keep going. I've had that happen a bunch of times.
So when when you get a social for a kid less than 12, say 10 months old, it's a fake social that you're getting. When the bank gets the social on there and the bank runs credit and credit comes like, or even a credit card company, MBNA, Visa, MasterCard, American Express, whatever ones it is, when they do the social, they're not checking how old the person with the Social Security is?
I mean, no. I mean, they're no.
Wait, well, let me get this straight. So I can write out the application myself, and I can say, same name. Everything's the same as a social, right? And I use that 10-month-old kid social to get a credit card. But I can put age 34, but on here to get the social, he's 10 months. The creditor that gives me the credit card for $500 or $1,000 or $200, they don't have a way of verifying whether this person, fictitious character, is 34 years old or 10 months old?
No. First of all,
you know what I'm asking.
I understand what you're asking.
Yeah.
Well, there's 2 different scenarios here. One is, let's say Matt Cox, myself. Let's say I wanted to suddenly start using a different Social Security number.
Okay.
I would have an issue because I already have a credit profile.
Yes, sure.
These guys don't have credit profiles. Lee Black does not have a credit profile. There's no Lee Black. So I take Lee Black, a fictitious name, I take an address, I take a date of birth and a SOCH issued to a 10-month-old, and I run all of that.
I get that, but what I'm saying is,
that creates a new profile that there's no disputing information to. Now in the public records, they say, hey, there's some guy out there named Lee Black. He was born in 1970. He's got this Social Security number, and he's got and he applied for a visa, and he lives at this house. Now maybe the visa says no, we're not. They deny him because he has no credit. Well, then they say, but you know what we will do, Mr. Black? We'll give you a credit card if you'll give us
$250.
Right,
Yeah.
$250. 300,
secure.
400, whatever.
Yeah.
So I give them the 300.
well, you can still build a credit with that.
Absolutely.
That's right.
In 6 months. In 6 months, if I get 2 or 3 of those, in 6 months, I've got 700 credit scores. I did it over and over again.
Well, Matt, what I'm asking for is the creditor, the bank, when they run a credit on you with that social that you put 34 years old, Equifax, Experience, TransUnion, they don't report back the age that matches the age that was put on the application?
No, there's no way for them to verify with Social Security other than to know that the Social Security number was recently issued. And there's only one of the 3 agencies that even checks. And they'll say, hey, this was recently issued. And the worst case scenario they'll do is say, can you send us a copy of your driver's license?
That's crazy.
So
to
you
me.
make a copy of the driver's license. You know how many times they would say, they would pull the credit and they'd say, hey, this is like a UPS box, right? But you have let's say you go to UPS, you get a real address, but it says box number 200. And they would say, hey, this is a UPS store.
My gosh.
And I would say, no, it's not. And they'd say, well, give us a water bill. And I say, sure. And I'd give them a water bill with a house address, and they'd go, boy, that's weird. We have this listed as a UPS. Okay, yeah. And they'd still mail it. You know it's a UPS box. You're mailing it just because I gave you a utility bill. They have little things that they ask for. People just, if you're really saying it's a residence, they want to mail it to a residence and not a UPS box. Then they ask you for something. If you can provide it, you're good. They just mail it. And I'm making the payments for so long. And then something happens. The guy gets into a car. You know how many times I had guys, there are 3 or 4 houses are going into foreclosure. The mortgage companies are writing letters. They're writing letters saying that they're going to, you're going to put you in collection, we're going to foreclose. I would make a copy of a 5-car pileup where somebody had been life flighted out, and I would make a copy of it. I'd retype it and I'd put my guy's name in it. Then I'd write a letter with a copy of that from his sister saying he's in critical condition. The doctors say even if he comes out of the coma, he'll never work again. You might as well just take the house. They stopped coming around. I mean, most people, they stop paying and they run. I would stop paying, but then I'd confront you and say, this is the reason, this is what's going on. I'd say, hey, I'm thinking about going into bankruptcy. I'd write a letter back. They just go away. Most people take off, and that makes them think something's wrong. But if you can say, keep in mind too, if they called their employer says, no, he no longer works here. They don't just stop answering the phone. He doesn't work here anymore. Then they get a letter saying he was in a car accident. So I mean, of course they're going to say they've got a reason. So they go away. Now we understand what happened. He was in an accident. It happens. He lost his job. It happens. And they go away. So, and I feel bad about that. I see the look on your face.
Oh, I'm not worried about you. I'm actually not processing it the way you think I'm processing it. Look, I run a company, and for me, we're designing a software technology right now. We're putting a few $1 million into it, but it's all about creating rules so guys can't beat the system. This isn't about what you're doing. You know, like for me, listen, I mean, obviously what you're doing is fraudulent. You went and did your time, 12 years in prison.
Right.
You did your crime and you got the punishment for it.
Right.
That's what the law does. You break the law, you get caught, you're going to go to jail. It's just kind of how the system works. Just like in the financial securities, you're going to lose your license, get terminated, get fined, you know, all this stuff that you got to do. But I'm just wondering, what the hell kind of a system is it that somebody can run a credit and it's not going to tell the bank that is trying to get financing from TransUnion, Equifax, or Experian that this client, it just got their social and the date of birth is, 7/10/2019 rather than 7/10, 1990. It's a big difference between that, so.
But all they know is it was issued within the last year, and they think that could be a mistake. Must be a mistake. He's got 3 credit cards.
The person that thinks this must be a mistake, how much is that person getting paid? Is that a $35,000 a year person?
Yeah.
Okay, I got it.
Yeah. And he probably makes money based on loans. He knows I can get this guy a loan. Is there a fraud alert? Yeah, there's a fraud alert, but I can get him a loan.
Got it.
If I just overlook that, so I'm going to overlook it because it doesn't make sense.
So years ago, Best Buy went away from commissions. They stopped paying commissions on their sales guys because they weren't doing customer service. It was just kind of like a cutthroat. And customers are kind of feeling like it's a little too competitive.
Right.
So they went to a different model. I think Nordstrom's did this as well at one point. They wanted more to be, hi man, how are you? How's everything? I'll spend a little bit more time talking to you. I like the shirt. So how's family? Everybody good? Yeah. What can I help you with? Yeah, let me see. Okay, I'll show you around. So they paid a little bit more salary, but no commissions because their motive was they don't want to be the cutthroat environment. Sometimes certain people you don't pay commissions to. Like those types of guys that are positioned that way where they are willing to get the loan to go through, that's a guy that shouldn't be getting commission. It should be just you're doing your job, is what you're doing. And your job is more to play defense than to play offense. So the comp structure for those guys, I don't think is set up properly. Okay, so now let's go back to where you are. You're now
I was thinking about one of the things you asked me. One was the creative financing. Was one of the things that people do. I'm sorry, it just dawned on me. That my brokers would do is they would say that the guy was owner occupying a property that he wasn't owner occupying. So if I'm buying a duplex, I can get 80% financing from Countrywide. Because it's an investment property. If I say I'm going to live there, I can get 95 to 100%. So all you have to do is your borrower says he lives there. So I remember one time we did, not once, we did this multiple times. I remember one time we must have done 8 different loans at one time. I still remember the broker's name that did it, but I'm not going to say his name. But he did eight owner-occupied properties, duplexes, all at the same time with 8 different lenders for one woman. And her husband was a sheriff's deputy. And one time I think we did 6 loans for also duplexes, owner-occupied, and for a realtor. For a big-time realtor in Brandon. Brandon's outside of Tampa. We did that a lot. And one time we did it, and 2 of the loans happened to be like on the same credit line. So one was a big bank, which was like Washington Mutual. They had their credit line was a smaller company. We didn't know it was just an extension of Washington Mutual. Essentially, they were using their credit line. So Washington Mutual ended up with 2 of the same loans. So they end up calling the broker and saying, look, we got 2 owner-occupied duplexes. What's going on? She comes in my office. She's like, oh, man, we got a problem. And I'm like, what's up? She's like, this guy, he's a lawyer for Washington Mutual. He's threatening to sue me. Put him on the phone. I get on the phone. We talk a little bit. He threatens to call the FBI. And, I tell him, look, you don't want to call the FBI. Who knows who was at your company that might have been doing something wrong? I don't know what what my broker's doing. Let's figure this out. So he lets us refinance it. They actually discounted. They gave us a short pay,
short sale.
Short sale, yeah, but short, so we didn't have to pay them the whole $95,000.
Sure, yeah.
They drop it to like 80 something, because we couldn't get the same type of loan. They took a huge cut, and they paid my broker a commission to refinance the loans, and they sent her flowers when it was all said and done. That's in the book. I remember it was so funny. I mean, it's not funny; it's horrible, but it was like shocking because he just had us over a barrel, but they didn't, They just want to pass. Let's just get through this and move on.
Let me ask you, rates being so low, when you were running and mortgage boom was crazy, were rates anywhere near where they are today?
No.
Nothing.
No. They were 5, 6, 7%. Yeah.
So
and subprime was way higher. So subprime's even higher than that.
Subprime was way higher than that.
Yeah, they're at least a couple, at least 200 basis points higher. So if the rate's 5%, it's 7 or 7.5 or 8 or 9. But I mean, what do I care? I'm only going to make a few payments.
So for you, it's a complete different world.
Yeah.
So how much of your sale was to a real customer? How much of it was just pure market manipulation and putting packages together?
You mean when I was on the mortgage company?
Yeah. Were you actually having a lot of real loans coming in? Or
oh
no?
Yeah. But it was, let's say it's 50-50. I mean, I was an FHA approved lender. We were doing conventional, FHA approved, VA approved. I mean, it was part of it was a legitimate company. But the fact is, if you had a pulse and you walked in my place, if you walked in that door and you had a pulse, you're getting a loan.
You're getting a loan.
You're getting a loan.
If you had a pulse.
Unless you decide not to. If you come in, I want this house, this is what I want, this is what I'm going to get you that house.
Got it.
I'll do whatever I got to do.
Got it. How much is your legitimate income coming in at that time?
I mean, maybe 40, 50%.
And what would that look like? $500,000 a year?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm not making that. This is Tampa, Florida. This is
Got it.
15 years ago, Tampa, Florida.
$200,000 a year.
Yeah.
Okay.
200,
I got
250.
it.
Yeah.
$200,000. So you have a good life. You're not making, because you said the loans are $50,000, $100,000, $150,000.
Yeah,
so you're not doing.
There are a couple, 200,000, 250, 300,000, but there's not a lot.
And are you getting correspondence at the back end, on the back end, or not at that time?
Yeah, we're getting
3/4 of a point.
We're getting a yield spread. They call it yield spread. It's like 1 or 2 points. You could get. Hey, listen. When I first started, you could get like 2 or 3 points.
Yeah, I
and then
remember
it got
that.
down to the
Yeah.
point where they were like, this is just too much. They were doing 1 or 2.
They didn't need to do it, and they felt like they had to do it, and it was getting even more money coming in. Got it. Now, let me ask you, would you consider yourself a better salesperson or more at a deal maker? What would you consider yourself?
I mean, I think I'm a good salesperson, but I think like I wrote a story about a guy named Vitali, and Vitali ran basically like a boiler room type situation where it's just high pressure, lots of high pressure. You know, they push and push and push until you close, and that's not my style. My style is more, it's more value. It's more, this is why the product is a good product. This is why you need the product. This is what it can do for you. You know, and you need to make a choice. And if it's, no, forget it, I'm not interested. Okay, I totally understand that. I wish you the best of luck. I hope you do find the product that you want, and we move on. Maybe I call them back in a couple of days. Maybe they call me back. Maybe it doesn't work out at all. But I'm not a high pressure guy. It's more like you have to believe in your product, and you have to know the value of the product. That was more my sales technique. Keep in mind that in the mortgage company, it's this is what we're charging, this is why we're charging it, and if you think you can go to Bank of America and get a 130% LTV loan that doesn't exist, by all means go. But they're going to throw you out. You're coming right back here. You know, and of course they are coming right back. And when they walked in the door, like I said, 50% of them, roughly, already knew they had an issue. They'd been somewhere else.
Got it.
Somebody directed them to me.
So were you more D paper, or were you actually doing A and Bs as well?
We were doing A and B. We were doing, you know, like I said, FHA approved. We were doing conventional loans. I wasn't doing those. We had certain brokers that liked doing those. But literally, you came in and you had all of your docs and you were this perfect 750 perfect documentation client, it was like, okay, call Susan. This is not for me. I'm not interested in doing this loan. You're going to argue about the interest rate. You're going to argue about how much, what my broker fee is. You're going to nitpick about, you know, the home inspection. And you're a problem. I'll take the guy from Tire Kingdom or Walmart that knows he's been beat up. He's got some dings in his credit, and he thinks I'm Superman because he's thinking this guy can do anything. I've already been turned down by 2 banks. No way I'm getting the loan.
Got it. That makes sense. What do you? So you were saying right now you're doing the script writing, you're doing all that other stuff. Can you right now work for somebody else or no? Can somebody hire you and start selling or no?
Sure, yeah, I can work for someone. Absolutely. I've been offered jobs. I just can't, like I said, I can't move. I have to stay in Tampa. You know, my mom, she's like, listen, she's 90 years old, she's in a home. I have lunch with her, I have breakfast with her 4 days a week. I typically have dinner once or twice a week. I don't live very far from her. And like I said, I mean, I just can't. I was offered a job in Seattle. I've been offered jobs in Los Angeles. I got a buddy that he was in Atlanta when he offered me the job, but now he's offered me a job in Nashville. I can't go, you know. So I mean, I have to stay in Tampa because of my mom.
Because your mom.
Yeah, she, like I said a minute ago, she came. I mean, this is a woman that came to see me every 2 weeks. The entire time I was down through breast cancer, through a stroke. My brother would say, Mom, you're sick. Maybe you shouldn't go this week. And she would say, well, I'm sick, but we're going. And he'd say, well, you know, you get so tired. She goes, well, then I'll sleep in the car. We're going. So, you know, like I said, I've been enough of a shit of a son that the least I can do is hang out, you know, as long as I can, as long as necessary. So, you know, moving's not an option. If I have to live in someone's spare room, I got to drive a piece of shit Jeep, well, then that's what's got to happen. Then I'm hanging out as long as I can. And in the meantime, I write synopses, I write books. That's what I'm doing to get by. So it's an issue, but you know, I'm making it work.
Mom passes zero judgment to you.
No. Oh, she loves me. Yeah, she's good. Yeah, she's good.
How was she when you were growing up? How was your relationship with her? I know you were saying your dad, you know, 3 months is good, then he goes on 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then he goes back to being normal again. How was she when you were growing up?
Oh, I mean, she's a rock. You know, everybody thinks their mom's a saint, you know, but she was the glue that held our entire family together.
When she's talking to you, is she telling you, hey, you know, Matthew, is she telling you, hey, be good, please don't go back and do it again? Or no, it's just relationship, conversations, life, nothing
Oh,
about
when I
that?
visit her now?
Yeah. Just curious, like.
She, I'm, you know, she's, you know, it's always, you know, she's, you know, you always hear about the Jewish mother, right? You know, but the Catholic mother's just as bad. You know, it's the, oh, you don't have any collared shirts? I'm like, no, Mom, I have collared shirts. You don't wear them. I'll wear a collared shirt next time. You know, she's like, you know, oh, so you're not shaving anymore? We're growing a beard? Is that what you're doing? And I'm, no, I'm shaving. I'll do it. Well, next time you'll be shaved. Yes, ma'am, I will be shaved next time. I mean,
Like that.
It's constantly, what are you doing for work? Oh, you're painting? Oh, okay. Okay, and that's working? You're selling those? I mean, she's, you know, and there's money in, I'm selling books, Mom, I've written the books, and there's money in that? It's not a lot of money, you know, but she's, yeah, she's awesome.
That's cool. That's cool. And so long term, you want to be in the world of writing books and turning those into documentaries, movies? That's what you want to do long term?
That's what I want to do. Listen, the average writer on the street is constantly trying to get to the guys that are in prison to get to the good stories. While I was in prison, I got 4 and 5 guys a day coming up to me telling me their stories.
So that's a good way of putting it.
Right. So the guy, they can't get it. They've got to write a letter. They got to ask them to add them to their core links. Can you email me? Can you write me a letter back? My guy just has to meet me in the library, tell me a story. And so every day I'm hearing stories and I'm like, look, you got a drug story. I understand what happened. I know it's fucked up, but I've got like 6 of those stories and it's just not, there's nothing unique about it, or you didn't steal enough money, or it's not. So I'm looking for unique stories that are over the top or just extremely unique, so they're worth writing. It's worth dedicating 2 or 3 months to write a synopsis. Plus I have all these guys, I have all of their documents. Most of these guys are fighting their case. So as opposed to some guy sitting down with me just telling me the story, and you, like a reporter, you can verify a little here and a little there. I've got your indictment. I have your FBI interviews. I've got the police reports. I have the transcripts. Mm-hmm. I can verify everything. I know what you're saying is true.
That gives you more credibility as a writer when you write it, and they're going to have more interest in it.
Right.
Hopefully. Who were you in high school?
I was troubled. I was a kid. I had learning disability. My dad was an alcoholic. I mean, it was, you know.
But were you selling weed? Were you the guy? Were you in the gangs? Were you were you a 4.0 GPA guy? Were you
No, I was getting C's in high. I went to a school with about 25 kids in it for private kids with learning disabilities, and I end up graduating there barely. I mean, with C's. End up going to college and got a degree in fine arts. And
you said USF? Where was it?
USF.
Yeah.
It did great at USF, but you know, like I said, when I graduated, there wasn't much I could do in the business world.
But who were you? Like, meaning, did you have a temper? Were you not good with authority? Did you get pissed off with your dad? Did you have a falling out with your dad? Did you have a point to prove? You're like, screw the world. Which one were you?
No, I mean, I definitely wanted to try and get respect from my father. He was a big influence in my life, but he was an alcoholic. He would go on binges, like 2-3 week binges, and then he'd be sober for 3 months and be a great guy. But he was belligerent. My mom used to call him, he'd give you a tongue lashing. He wouldn't spank you or anything, but he'd talk to you like you were just a dog. So, and I've got a learning disability. I go to school with very little kids, and there are only a few kids that are even close to my age. They're spread out throughout Tampa, so I don't really have a lot of friends. So I mean, it's I would say I was a troubled kid, but I wasn't getting in trouble. I wasn't
not a drug guy.
No, never into drugs, nothing
Girls?
like that. Yeah, I had a lot of girlfriends.
Okay, so were you a party guy or no?
No,
Not really.
no,
Just
it was
girlfriends.
Just girlfriends.
Sports?
I'm 5'6". That's not a lot.
Baseball, second base.
There's no sports at the school. It's got 25 kids.
I got it. And movies, music. What's your inspiration? Like, what are you reading? Are you a?
Not reading anything. I've got a learning disability. I'm watching TV. I'm watching movies.
What are you watching?
Lots of movies. At that age, what am I watching? Gosh.
I'm just curious. Like, what stuck with you? Like, what inspired you? Are you a Rocky guy? Are you a, Godfather guy? Are you?
No, I mean, I definitely have seen all the Godfathers, obviously, who hasn't?
Was there a character like, man, I like this guy because this guy gets away with everything? Was there something?
I would say all of that, I'd say, happened when I was older. It became crime movies. I loved, The Score. I loved.
Sick movie.
Huh?
Great
It's a
movie.
great movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Matchstick Men. Catch Me If You Can. The Heist. Grifters. I mean, those types of movies.
I got it. This makes sense.
Love those movies.
Were you what was that? The story of Hughes. Were you a Howard Hughes guy or no?
Oh, I did see the movie, and.
But were you a fan of his or no?
Only from what I saw from the movies.
Okay. So Catch Me If You Can. I mean, that's a sick story. To be a true story, and eventually FBI hires him to help him catch the guys.
Right.
When you watch that, where you're like, wow, this guy didn't get away with anything.
He was amazing. It was an amazing
So
story.
to you, he was an amazing story.
Yeah.
How old were you the
absolutely.
first time you watched that?
How old was I? Was I in my 20s?
20s when you saw that?
20s, yeah.
So was there a screw the bank? They already have so much money. I don't give a shit about the bank. Was it, the hell with these, people that are doing countrywide? They're already screwing people anyway. So what's wrong with me making some money? What was there any of that or no? You're just kind of like, I'm just trying to make money to have fun.
I want to say it's a combination. I listen, no scruples at all about taking money from the bank. I had no problem. I didn't see that. Saw it as an institutional crime. I didn't see it as hurting anybody. And there are people that will drastically disagree. But what I stole, I felt like was a pittance. So I had no problem at all with it. And listen, like I said, to be honest, it's a huge thrill, and it absolutely made me feel like I mentioned this too. Sorry, in the book I was talk about you feel like James Bond. You walk into the bank and you provide them with fake ID, Social Security card, fake W-2s, fake pay stubs, and they're calling you Mr. Black the entire time, and then they cut you a check for $250,000 and you walk out of the bank and they thank you for being a great customer. I mean, that's 007 stuff. I mean, you feel amazing. I'm walking, I've got fake passports. I'm walking through customs. Mr. Carter, Mr. so-and-so, and they're looking at my document. These are issued by the U.S. State Department. I'm going in and out of the country with different passports. So it's an amazing feeling.
Is the thrill of getting away, or is the thrill of making them look like an idiot?
I think it's getting away with. It's definitely getting away with, because I'm not around for anybody to look bad. So it's getting away with it. And this is the thing about the money too, is that I'm not a flashy guy. Like I never had a Lamborghini. Wasn't driving a Porsche. I'm driving a $40,000 or $50,000 sports car, and I'm perfectly happy. I'm not flashy. didn't want a bunch of attention. I want a pretty girlfriend and a decent vehicle, and that's it. Even when I have $1 million in the bank, I'm driving a $50,000, $60,000 truck. I'm not trying to drive a Ferrari. It just wasn't my style. I'm not looking for the attention.
Are you running? Are you running with a crew? Like, are you partying with a group of you?
Well, by the time I start my own mortgage company, we have a fairly tight-knit group, and everybody's kind of, they all know. You've got realtors, you've got a group of realtors, you've got a couple of appraisers, you've got some underwriters that you're dealing with. I bought an underwriter he wanted, what did he want? We were giving him $200-$300 every time a loan went through. We ended up giving him, he worked for United Capital Lending, I think. I got him a compressor, like it was a gay guy. It was a silver compressor with like red interior. I thought it looked horrible. He said, I want this car. You get me that car, you make all the payments, you get me the car. He said, everything you have goes straight through. It did too. It was a good 6 months. So
everything you put, it's going to go through.
Provided it looked right. Like, he's getting it. He's saying, look, change this. Call the appraiser. He's fixing it, and he's like, send it to me. Now it's
anything happened to him when you got caught, or no? Like, when you went down, did a lot of people go down, or no?
No, because what happened was, when I took off on the run, because I was on the run for 3 years. So while I was on the run, the FBI was waiting to catch me. So they're investigating, but they're really waiting to catch me, because everybody's just going to blame me. So they're thinking, if we catch Cox, now you can't blame Cox, because we're going to threaten to give this guy 50 years. He's going to give up everybody. So these guys are giving me up. As they're talking to them, they're all saying, it was Matt, I didn't know. It was Matt, I didn't know. So they're thinking when we grab him, and listen, when they grabbed me, they had a stack. You know what FBI 302s are? That's it's the name of the interviews that they get. They call them FBI. It's a 302. I had 302 forms, and I have MOI forms, a memorandum of interviews from the Secret Service. And I mean, I had a stack. Everybody had given me up. But of course, most of them they'd given me up by covering themselves. Yes, I did this, but Matt had told me, he told me this. So I didn't know. So I wasn't aware of what he was doing. So yeah. Sorry, I was just
Crazy stuff. When you're on the run for 3 years, at what point did you know you're on the Secret Service wanted list? Like at what point was it when you're like, okay, oh my gosh, these guys are really after me?
Oh yeah, I'd gone to, well, when they came to get me, it was a sheriff's deputy that came and told me, look, FBI's formed a task force. Well, there was a task force formed by the FDLE, Florida Department of Law Enforcement. They handed it to the FBI. I'm already on probation. Remember, I told you I had lost the mortgage company. I started this huge scam, went for about a year and a half, 2 years, got $11.5 million, or borrowed $11.5 million. We're all making good money. But suddenly on like a Thursday, this sheriff's deputy shows up and says, listen, I used to date this chick on the, works for Tampa PD. He was with Hillsborough County. He said she came to me because I'd done a bunch of loans for him. Came to him in the morning, early one morning, like 6 o'clock in the morning, and said, look, your buddy Matt Cox is going to be arrested in the next few days. I worked on a task force. We just handed it over to the FBI. They're going to arrest him in the next couple days. So he tells me that on a Thursday. So I have literally an hour left in the day and the whole next day to get out as much cash as I can because I'm thinking I'm leaving. I'm already on federal probation. The judge is not going to be happy. So I'm definitely going to prison. I can't go to prison. Look at me. I mean, I'm too cute to go to prison. This is not going to work out well for me. So, I mean, I've seen Shawshank. I know what happened. So I'm ready to take off. So I, within a day or so, I get like 80 grand out in cash.
This is the one you were talking about. Yeah.
Right. So I go straight to, I've got this girl with me named Rebecca Hauk. I'd been dating her a couple months. I barely know her. She desperately wants to come with me. She's in love, she's wonderful, everything's great. And she had held it together pretty well for a couple months.
And she knows what's going on.
Oh, she knows 100% what's going on.
Got it.
And so we take off. I don't realize that she's bipolar. She's not taking her meds. She's we're not even out before we're at each other's throats. She's nuts. So I get 80 grand out, we take off on the run, we go straight to Atlanta, we rent a house. I satisfy the loan on the house. I borrow about $400,000. I pull the cash out of the bank. It's funny because I was thinking a minute ago. I was thinking one of the stories I was going to tell you was that one time I had gone to I was cashing checks for like $8,000, $9,000, trying to stay under the $10,000. And so at one point I get a check for like 29 grand, and I think, man, this is ridiculous. You know, I'm sick of this. We're going in here and here. It's going to take another month. So I said, I'm going to start cashing larger checks. And she's like, don't do it. And I said, no, it's okay. I'm going to cash it. So I go in. I had stolen a guy's name by the name of Scott Cugno, and I'd gotten an Alabama driver's license issued to him. So I have a real ID. I have a real social, a real ID. Everything's real. So I go in the bank, give him the cashier's check that had been issued by the title company. When I refinanced the property, I had him issue the checks in a different guy's names. Larger amounts. One of them was 29 grand. Most of them were 8 or 9,000. One was 29. So I go in. I say, hey, my name's Scott Cugno. I need to cash this check. They go, well, that's odd. And I was like, well, okay. They said, why don't you put it in your bank? And I said, well, because my bank's in Florida, and they're going to hold it for who knows how long. This is 15 years ago. So they go, that doesn't make sense. And I go, well, you know, this is a cash transaction bank. You can give me that. Yeah, we do larger. Okay, let's talk to the manager. Manager comes out. He says, okay. He said, what's going on? I said, look, I need to cash the check. And he goes, okay. So he takes the check and my ID and my credit card and he leaves. And I remember Becky, the girl I was on the run with, she calls me up. She's calling, what are you doing? I go, well, what's taking so long? Well, the guy's being a jerk. He's waiting. He's doing verifications and stuff. I don't know. She's like, okay, well, I go, look, if the cops show up outside, call me. And so I hang up. We wait. Guy comes back and he goes, okay, Mr. Cugno, I have a question for you. He said, how did you get the check issued to you? And I went, well, it was issued a guy refinanced his house and he paid me the check. Okay, why? And I went, well, not that it wasn't any of his business, but it wasn't a hard question. So I'm like, I'm trying to alleviate his anxiety. So I said, well, I'm adding an addition onto his house, and this is part of the draw. And he goes like, that makes sense. And it does make sense. And I was like, right. He goes, okay. He leaves. 5 minutes later, she's still calling. What's going on? I don't know. He's got my stuff. We get out of there. No, I can't. He's got my stuff. I can't leave. Hang up. He comes back. He goes, what are you going to do with the cash? And I go, are you serious? And he goes, well, I'm just, it's just, I feel apprehensive about this. And I went, well, I'm going to cash a lot of the guys' checks. We give them checks, and they don't have bank accounts because, they just don't. They're laborers, and we're going to cash some of their checks. And he goes, okay, that makes sense. Leaves, comes back. Finally comes back, and I said, hey, what's going on? And he says, listen, he said, we're just doing a series of checks to verify things. And I go, okay. And he says, I said, well, what are you doing? He goes, well, we're trying to, he said, it turns out that this check was issued on a house owned by a Michael Shanahan. And I was like, right. And he said, right, so we're just trying to verify that Michael Shanahan issued the check. That's all. Well, there's a real Michael Shanahan. And I'm thinking, oh my God, well, that's not good. And I'm like, oh, okay. So he leaves. Becky calls, what's going on? I go, they're trying to call Michael Shanahan. She's like, get out of the bank. And I'm like, I can't. This guy's got my shit. I leave the bank for sure. They're calling the cops. I have to wait. Hang up the phone. A minute later, my phone rings. I look at it. I don't recognize the number. I pick it up and I go, hello. And there's a woman like, hi, this is Kimberly from SunTrust Bank. Is this Michael Shanahan? And I'm like, yes, it is. And she goes, hi, we have someone here at the bank trying to cash a cashier's check that was drawn on your from the title company. And I'm like, okay. And they said, how much was the amount for? I said, yeah, that was Scott Cugno. It was about $29,000 even, I think. And she says, that's right, thank you very much, Mr. Shannon. I said, hey, how did you get my number? Because if you called information, you would have got his real number. And I go, how'd you get my number? Oh, we called the title company. They looked on the application that I had filled out, and I'd used the cell number. And they said, we just got it off of there. I hope it's okay. No problem. Okay, thank you. Boom. Hang up the phone. 5 minutes later, still, the guy comes out with some woman, counts out the money to me, gives me the money. I stand up, and he says, Mr. Cugno, I would like to say that I feel very uncomfortable about this transaction. And I said, well, what is it exactly? And he goes, I can't put my finger on it. And I said, well, it'll come to you. And I walk off. Listen, I was terrified, fucking terrified. I like to think that when the Secret Service showed up, 5, 6 days later, a week later, he realized that was it.
Wow, so you leave.
Oh, I leave.
You're out at this
We
point.
cashed like $400,000. We had $400,000 in a duffel bag. And we leave. But we're spending money like you can't believe. I mean, it's ridiculous. We're going to Jamaica. We're going to Bermuda. We're going
partying hardcore.
Yeah, we're going to Las Vegas. This chick's a maniac. She's nuts. I mean, she won't. I literally had to make her. I threatened to leave her 3 different times. I think I put 2 in the book. She calls. She begs. I'm sorry. I'm like, you've got to see somebody. I get her to start taking Zoloft. She takes it for about a month. She stops taking it. She doesn't like the way it makes her feel. She goes nuts again. She gets the cops called one day on me, 2 o'clock in the morning. I mean, listen, it was a hostage situation. I mean,
This is the Becky girl.
Yeah,
Rebecca.
she was over the top, just insane.
Matt, are you at this point partying hardcore, alcohol, drugs, rock and roll, or no? You're
I
still
don't-
under control.
no,
That's not you.
It's not me.
Okay.
My father's an alcoholic. I don't drink. I don't smoke.
At all?
At all. Ever.
So you're
I'm not
under
doing it.
control. You have control of your emotions because
obviously
you're not.
have a control issue. I mean,
no doubt about
I got major problems. I'm a narcissist, antisocial. I mean, I've got some issues.
Are you July? Is it July 2nd your birthday? When's your birthday?
Yeah, July 2nd.
July 2nd is your birthday. Yeah. Narcissist, and would you consider yourself pathological liar as well, or no?
No.
You wouldn't put yourself there.
No, absolutely not.
To be able to face some of these guys and stay that
Yeah.
natural, like there's a fine line. There's books written about sociopaths that they can just look at you and tell you, would you say you're somewhat there or no?
Well, I'm not saying I'm not a sociopath. What
Okay,
I'm saying
got
is
it.
I'm not a pathological liar. Pathological liars tend to they feel good about lying. They lie. It's impulsive. They almost can't control it.
Yeah.
Some of them, there are different versions of pathological liars. I wrote a whole book on a guy named Marcus Schrenker who's a pathological liar. And so I've read multiple books on the subject and studies. And he's clearly a pathological liar.
What's the difference in your eyes? Pathological liar, sociopath. What's the difference?
Well, almost all, pathological liars are pretty much always sociopaths. So you could be a sociopath and not be a pathological liar.
How's that?
Well, a sociopath is just somebody who has they are not, basically you're like a stick of furniture to me. They have almost no empathy at all, no sympathy for anyone, but a pathological liar is someone who can't control his ability to tell the truth. He's impulsively just lying. He enjoys lying. He gets a thrill out of lying, out of fooling you. My lies are simply designed to acquire money and move on. I'm actually, matter of fact, a lot of the articles, if you read The Atlantic, a couple of the different people that they talk to, in my case, they say the thing is, in Matt's personal life, he's extremely an honest person. It's only when it comes to running a scam. So if I'm running a scam, of course I'm going to tell you what I need to tell you to acquire what I want. But in my social life, I'm not going to lie to you. There's I'll just tell you the truth. This is what's going on. You'll deal with it or you won't.
So sociopath to you is there is no emotion. You're a stick of furniture. You're not. I
wouldn't say emotionless. I mean, listen. There's varying degrees of everything. There are people that are schizophrenic, and they happen to have a little bit of paranoia on one or two small subjects. Then there are guys that are extremely delusional. They just see things that aren't there. They hear things that they believe things that are just outrageous. Mm-hmm. So there's always varying degrees.
From the moment you came in, you looked paranoid. From the moment you stepped in, you were paranoid.
Oh, because you keep in mind how this all occurred. I literally got a couple emails, and I had seen the program, and I'd seen the Sammy the Bull, and I'd seen the other one, a part of another one. I watched the whole thing, which we talked about. The guy with the
Michael Francis.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which was great. He was great, and so it happened very quickly, and it was like, okay, there was. Next thing you know, I'm walking in. I mean,
Did you think like I'm CIA or the FBI?
No,
or so,
I'm not
but
paranoid.
you were paranoid though when you came in a little bit.
Because I didn't. I thought at some point somebody would say, "Hey, ask me some questions." That like. Yeah, of course.
Oh, okay.
I thought there would be some kind of a setup. Instead, I didn't. I'm walking here. I'm still waiting. Like, okay, well, at some point they're going to sit me down and say, okay, well, here's what we know. Here's what we're going to fill in. Instead, I walk in and it's like, sit down. I know everything about you. Are you serious?
and then Hawk is over here to your right.
The intimidation thing is. I mean, it's a little shocking.
Wow. Okay. My question would be, do you think today? Are we set up in a way where a Matthew Cox of 2020, March 2020, can be prevented from happening? Or a Matthew Cox of today can still do what you did in 2006?
No, I think it's funny because I did another podcast. I did a podcast, and the comments are outrageous. But a lot of the comments are, oh, this could never happen. Nothing's changed. There haven't been, it's not like there's all these, public records is still recording. Listen, in New York, they have a huge rash where people are simply they're finding people's properties that have no mortgage on them at all, and they're transferring the deeds to people, to them. They're doing a quitclaim deed to somebody that, like a buddy of theirs, and then they're selling the property out from somebody because it happens to be some abandoned house that's in decent shape. They'll get access to the house, they'll get an appraisal, and they'll sell it. I'm going to transfer the house from this person to you, record it. Nobody's contacting the original owner. It's a recording system. So, those things are still happening. Satisfying loans, that still happens. In the way that I did it, the combination of scams that I used was unique. So every time I did it, they very quickly zoomed in, or connected it with me.
So which ones can't be done today?
I don't know that any of them couldn't be done. Other than the fact that borrowing the money is more difficult, but it's not impossible. The only difference is most of these loans now, instead of changing a W-2, typically they're having you sign what's called an 8821 form, and they're sending it off to the IRS to verify your employment. So they're saying, you said you made $75,000 last year, you didn't. That's a lie.
They're doing that now?
There's a lot of most mortgage companies.
How much does that cost to the bank to do it?
It's almost free.
Oh, it's free.
Yeah, they send it to the IRS.
So why wouldn't all of them do it?
It's more paperwork, and think if you're mailing off if you're mailing off 10,000 and one's coming back bad, is it really worth it? I mean, most of these people, even the bad loans, a lot of them just pay.
Yeah, but I give you an idea on the insurance side. On the insurance side, there's something called Nexus, right? So where they check what medication. Like I can check if you say I'm not on any medication, and I'm the insurance company underwriting you, right?
Right.
I can go through a testing center that reporting place that can send me an email back and say, no, Matthew takes Zoloft, he's on Prozac, and he takes this, he takes blood thinner. These are the things he's been on for the last 6 years.
Right.
Then I come back and I'm like, wait a minute, I can't give you preferred underwriting, right? But that testing costs me $25
right.
to pay to that reporting agency. So on the insurance side, sometimes people don't want to do it because they don't want to pay $25 times 10,000 policies. That's $250,000 a month of a cost. That's $3 million. I can keep that $3 million and put it for underwriters. But you're saying on the mortgage side, there's no cost to it to find out from the IRS.
It's the IRS. So I'm not sure that the IRS.
Why wouldn't every bank do it?
IRS did not used to charge. Do they charge now? I don't know.
You don't know.
But I don't think so.
Okay, so let me ask you this other question. This other question is, which part of the things today, I know you said some of it like the IRS verification, so if it's not being fixed today and everything you did can be done today, if all of it can be done today, who's at fault here? Meaning, when you're in the sales world, the processor wants it to be funded just as much as the loan officer does, right? And whether it's the title, the appraisal guy making $450 or title's making $1,700, $2,000 depending on the side of the loan, there's a lot of people that want to get this loan to be funded.
Right.
The only person that takes the hit is when WAMU realized China's no longer buying their paper on the back end, and they shut it down, and WAMU goes from being a $330 billion company in 2005 to being sold to Chase for $1.9 billion. So really the only person that takes a hit on the back end is the one that can't sell the paper. Kind of like that one guy that the $2 million, they sold it for $1 million, and they come back. But my question is, because there's so many people that have their hands in the candy jar, like everybody's getting a piece of it, does anybody want all of this to be stopped? And if yes, who?
Well, I can't imagine. First of all, I mean, fraud just, they love to throw like the numbers. It's $3 billion or $1 trillion.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, but overall, it's very little. It's the percentages. It's not even like 1% is fraud. I mean, it's so minor that why would you spend all of this money when the actuaries have already accounted for a certain amount of fraud? So if we know there's going to be a certain amount of fraud, we account for it. What is the real incentive to try and fix it?
It's a marketing loss, the way they would look at it.
Right.
Form of a marketing loss.
Right. What's the big deal? We're good. It's really not hurting us. We can bitch and complain, but the truth is, it's really not damaging. And it's more.
Interesting.
It's more. I think it's more trouble to put up all these things.
Regulations and over-regulated.
Right. Now a lot of these individual people are going to get hurt. The people that actually need the loans aren't going to be able to get the loans because we're trying to stop all this fraud. But the truth is, the fraud really isn't harming us as much as it is, as much as people think.
So flip the coin. FBI hires you, okay? And they say, come on in. We want you to help us out. We want you to catch the modern day Matthew Cox. Would you know exactly how to catch all of them? Would there be trends that you can?
But there's not. By the time I've done what I'm doing, by the time I've done my scam, I'm already gone. How do you detect that scam? Unless you want to revamp the entire.
Most of these guys are greedy, though. It's tough to kind of leave and be gone, right? That's the biggest temptation of a scam artist because he can't. It's always the next hit is the last hit, like the movie Carlito's Way, right? Where he's like, well, babe, this is the last one I'm doing, and then we're going to go and live over there.
Even I have the same thing. I was on the run 3 years. Dateline was coming out. Mm-hmm. I'd just been in Fortune magazine, had just done a piece on me. So I was in Bloomberg Business Week, did 2 pieces. Fortune magazine, there were 30 some odd articles in the St. Pete Times. Chicago Tribune did. That's the whole time I'm on the run. So I know it's coming down. And I know that Dateline was about to come out. And I'm ready to go. I'm leaving. And I'm thinking, I'm just going to pull out $2 or $3 million and I'm leaving. And I don't make it to that. Let's say I like to think that would have been it.
You think so?
I like to think so. But you know what? Let's face it. Almost every time I did something, that was it. Because you're greedy or you're overconfident. Look, I'll tell you one time. One time I'm on the run. I was on the Secret Service's most wanted list, by the way, at this point.
What year is this? 06 or 05?
This is 04?
Okay.
No. This is 05. I want to say this is 05.
Peak of the mortgage industry.
Right.
04, 05.
Right. I had gone to Las Vegas with Becky.
Okay.
At this point, I'm surveying homeless people to get their information. So I've come up with a survey form that says we're surveying homeless people to get to determine where we're going to place our next homeless facility. I work for the Salvation Army. I've got a little badge. I know it's horrible. I feel bad. So stop judging me. So
creative.
they have no idea. For $20, they're filling out the form. I order all your stuff. I got your high school transcripts. I got everything. I then go in the DMV. I get a driver's license. I'm driving. I buy a car in your name. I don't even need the. Of course, I go to Social Security. I get a Social Security issued. So I've got clean Social Security. I got credit. I got a house. I got whatever I want in your name. You're some guy that lives under a bridge in Las Vegas. Now I'm in South Carolina. I remember the guy. This is funny because the guy had gotten in Las Vegas. I meet him while I'm doing the survey. I ask about does he have any a criminal record. He says he's got several arrests for prostitution, but they were misdemeanors. I said okay. I go, so you're a male prostitute? He's like, yeah. I was like, oh, okay, whatever. So I take the thing. I go to South Carolina. I go to DMV. I get a driver's license in his name. I then go buy 2 houses. After I buy those houses, I satisfy the loan in his name, satisfy the loan in both those houses. I then go to multiple mortgage companies and I borrow money on the houses. One of them I borrow like $300,000-$400,000. The next one I borrow like close to $1 million on the house. Their house is only worth $200,000. I go in the bank, I'm cashing checks. I'm pulling out $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 over the course of a few weeks. Becky, by the way, the whole time, every time I would go into a bank, this didn't, not all the time, but a lot of times, she would say, what happens if you get arrested? And I would say, if I get arrested, they'll be arresting me as, the guy's name was Gary Sullivan. They'll be arresting me as Gary Sullivan.
The male prostitute.
The male prostitute.
Yeah.
They will not run my prints right away because my identity is not in question. Back then, they didn't have the scanners. So they're not going to run, they'll scan you, but it doesn't necessarily run it through APHIS.
So that's a new thing they're doing. They got scanners now.
Right. Well, they didn't at the time. They had them, but
Sure.
it wasn't. They weren't. I said, look, the worst that'll happen, I get arrested. It'll be a minor charge. Get me a lawyer. Get me out on bail. We'll take off. She goes, okay. So I go in the bank one day. I go into Wachovia. I'm waiting to cash a check for like $6,000, and I'd pulled out $50,000, $60,000 out of that account. I had like 8 accounts. Well, next thing I know, bam, a cop walks up. They grab me from behind. They arrest me. They walk me in the back. I'm done. That's it. I already know I'm on the Secret Service's most wanted list. This is it. They take me in the back. They sit me down. All the customers are looking at me. Guy says, Mr. Sullivan, we're waiting for the detective to show up. I'm thinking detective, okay, that's like FBI or something, I guess. He's coming. Well, then this cop comes in, and he says, hey, I'm with the Richmond County Sheriff's Department. We understand, Wachovia's fraud department called us. They said you're running some kind of a scam. You're pulling out cash. I go, are you serious? He goes, I said, look, man, am I under arrest? He's like, no. I said, well, I feel like I'm under arrest. And I show him my cuffs, and he goes, oh, take those off him. Takes them off me. They call the Wachovia head of security. He's on the phone. He says, okay, now what's going on? He's borrowed how many loans? He said, you got 3 loans on the house. I actually had like 6. They only caught 3. And I said, oh, okay. I said, yeah, is that illegal? And the guy goes, I'm not really sure. And I remember right then thinking, I'm walking out of here. I just got to convince this guy I haven't done anything wrong. Wachovia is telling him I've done something wrong. But if I can get out of here. So I start arguing with him. This guy's saying he's got all first mortgages. I'm saying they're not all first mortgages. Wachovia's first mortgage because they know they lent me a first mortgage. I said, and he goes, who are the other ones? And he goes, oh, SunTrust and so and so. Right, SunTrust is a credit line. The other one is a second mortgage. That's the 3. And he's like, well, he wants to know why you took out all that money, $500,000 on a $200,000 house. I said, bro, I don't know how it works. I work for a labor company. I give him my business card. I said, all I know is I came here, the woman, I told her I needed $500,000. The loan officer said I can get you this much. I got a friend over here, she can get you this much. It sounds to me like they got a problem at the bank. I don't know anything about it. He says, okay. And the guy's screaming, it's a shotgunning scam. You don't understand. He's doing this, he's doing that. He's like, and I'm saying, man, I wouldn't know how to do this. I don't know what he's talking about. And he says, yeah, he works for a labor company. He doesn't, and he's like, well, why are you pulling out all this cash? And I go, well, I'm cashing guys' checks. I mean, I got a bunch of Mexican guys that doing roofs, and they don't take checks, or I give them a check and I cash a check. I mean, is that illegal? No, that's not illegal. Okay. So then he says, his ID starts with 000. And he goes, no, it's a real ID. It was a real ID. He goes, it's a real ID. This guy was in California, Wachovia. He goes, no, our IDs start with 000. And he said, trust me, I've run him through NCIC. It's him. This is Gary Sullivan. And I go, oh, now I'm not Gary Sullivan? I go, come on, bro, what are we doing here, man? What are we doing? He goes, I know, Gary, it's okay. And he says, okay, so he talks to the guy. This guy literally is arguing with him. He eventually says, okay, I'm going to take him downtown, have him fill out a police report. I'm waiting for the district attorney to call me back. I don't even know what to charge him with, if I can charge him with anything. I think you need to talk to your loan officer. Hangs up the phone. I then get up. When I get up, the 2 sheriff deputies are there. And he says, do you have a driver's license? And he said, this is an ID. And I said, yeah, I have a driver's license. I said, but it's in Nevada. I don't know if Gary Sullivan has. He's a homeless guy. He's blowing guys for $20 a pop on the park bench. I don't know if he's got a driver's license. One of the cops says, I'll check. He goes out to his car. He comes back and he goes, he does have a driver's license. And he goes, oh, okay, it's cool. And he goes, yeah. He goes, well, it says he's 5'10". And they look at me and I go, well, with a good pair of shoes. And they all go, ha, ha, ha. And so at the same time, he says, I remember he had said something about, that's right, you're from Nevada. And all the cops look at me and they look at each other and they kind of grin. And I realize he said he ran me through NCIC. He thinks I've been arrested in Nevada for prostitution. And I thought, oh, fuck. That was just ridiculous. So they gave me my ID. I follow him to the police station. What am I going to say? I literally almost want to say, listen, man, that's all bullshit. My name's Matt Cox. They follow me to the police station. I go in the police station, fill out the police report. I'm waiting in the hallway. My wanted poster, by the way, is on the wall. There's all these posters. My only color one on the whole wall.
You're seeing it.
I'm seeing it. I'm pissing in my pants. When I leave, before I got there, took my own car. When I'm driving there, Becky calls me. I pick up the phone and she goes, oh my God, what's going on? And I tell her what happened, and she goes, you don't understand. They just raised you to #1 on the Secret Service's most wanted list. You've got to get out of there. I said, I can't. There's a sheriff's deputy behind me. The other guy's in front of me. I got to play this out. And I say, the worst that'll happen is I get arrested. You get me out on bond. She goes, I'm not getting you out on bond. I'm not getting you a lawyer. She had like $600,000 in cash.
Of your money?
My money. She was now living in Houston. And I'm like, what the fuck?
Are you still together or no?
Well, we're not together. We're still a team, but we're not
with
together.
Benefits.
Yeah.
Okay.
We hate each other. So I go into the police station, fill out the report. Guy walks me out. I get in my car. I leave. I go straight to 2 more banks and get out more money. Until another person recognizes me, goes to make a phone call. I jump in my car and I leave. So that was insane. And what's funny about that, so I remember like a week later, it comes out in the St. Petersburg Times comes out and says, fugitive caught in South Carolina, released by authorities. And it was a big article about how they grabbed me, they brought me downtown, I talked my way out of it. They always mention that, like on American Greed, they always mention it.
What did Playboy write about you in 06?
Oh God, that was probably a couple thousand words. What they write, they made it sound like I was this, like the most ingenious, prolific mortgage fraud con artist of all times. And yeah, it says some great sound bites. The big thing they always latch on to is one of the things you were asking about, like how flawed is the system, let's say. When I was satisfying the loans, one time I satisfied a loan using the name C. Montgomery Burns from The Simpsons. So C. Montgomery Burns satisfied the loan to like Federal Savings and Loan Bank, and I remember thinking it was cute and it was funny. The judge had no sense of humor. He did not find it funny at all.
But you said earlier you don't like to make people look stupid, but you like to make people look stupid a little bit. Like to say, like, look how dumb you are that you're allowing me to finance loans on Reservoir Dogs by Quentin Tarantino, you idiot.
It's a great movie.
It is a great movie. I have a story with that. My sister's getting married to my brother-in-law, Siamak, and we're sitting at home, and my sister said, look, you got to try to impress my dad. My dad's not comfortable with us getting married. So he comes over, he says, yeah, I think we should watch a movie. My dad's a traditional Middle Eastern guy, so he puts in Reservoir Dogs. My dad's like, what is wrong with this guy? You motherfucker. But if you've seen the movie multiple times, you're not crazy.
Cut the guy's ear off. It's all horrible.
Like, what is wrong with your guy? Now, they've been married for 15, 16 years and love each other, but that's Reservoir Dogs. I think it was his first movie that did. He put $400,000 into it, made $14 million, one of the biggest hits, story like return-wise, and he becomes who he is today. So at what point do you get caught and you said, it's done? When was that?
That was late November 2006. I had moved to Nashville. And
Nashville, like you're trying to find the church because there's the capital of Bible Belt, in America. You going to church trying to be Christian or?
I'm just trying to, listen, I just like country music.
Yeah.
So I go to Nashville and I buy a bunch of houses in an area and I start the whole thing over again. I think I borrowed like $3.5 million or something like 2.5 million. I forget what they said. They said $3.5 million. I think it was only like 2.5. So I borrowed some money, and I'm at that point I'm dating a girl, and she and I end up seeing another girl, and my girlfriend ends up finding out who I am, pleads with me not to leave, because I was like, oh, you know who I am, I gotta leave. But we're living together, we're in love, I think it's okay. She ends up confiding in the other girl. The other girl turns me in.
Got it.
Secret Service shows up, they arrest me.
When you say the other girl, is this like a three-way relationship?
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
So I end up getting grabbed. I get, it was bad. I mean, we knew Dateline was coming out. By that point, all these articles had come out.
Dateline about you, about what you're doing.
Right.
Okay.
Dateline did 2 one-hour specials on me. One before I was arrested, and then one after I was arrested. Once I'd been arrested, the U.S. attorney came to me and said, we want you to do an interview with Dateline, be interviewed by them. And they said they'd consider it substantial assistance. I mean, you've interviewed guys before, so you know what substantial assistance is. It's cooperation with the government. Substantial assistance means you cooperated with the government, which led to an arrest or a conviction. So she told my lawyer, I will consider this substantial assistance. Because by the time I get caught, everybody's already told on me. People have gone to jail. There's a whole bunch of people that haven't gone to jail. But I'm definitely ready to cooperate. I'm ready to do anything. I'm looking at a huge sentence. So
have they caught you when Dateline called you, or no, not yet?
No. When they caught me, and within a month or two, Dateline's episode came out.
Oh, okay, I got it.
I was leaving the country because I knew it was coming out.
Where were you going to go to?
I was going to go to Australia because at that point, if you showed up in Australia with really
$300,000,
a couple $100,000,
yeah,
$200,000, $300,000,
citizen, yeah.
You became it wasn't even at that point. It was a citizen if you wanted to be fingerprinted and run. You could be a non-resident alien. You were allowed to buy property. You were allowed to start a business.
Like Panama, very interesting.
Right.
Australia.
Right.
Yeah.
So I got a driver. I got to be there. I couldn't get a job, but I could hire Aussies. I could buy property. So if you show up with just a few $100,000, so that was 15 years ago.
Who else went to Australia? Jordan Belfort also went to Australia.
I did hear that. Hear that.
Very interesting. So obviously Jordan Belfort has been. We done a couple things together. I was on his. He was on our thing.
Right.
Telling the story. So your plan was to go to Australia.
Right.
To do that, but then they catch you here.
They grabbed me. I mean, that's what prompted it. We were pulling out cash. One of the things that prompted a conversation between my girlfriend and this other girl, we're asking her to cash checks, get us some cash, and she says, what happened? And so that causes the thing, look, here's what's happening. Dateline's coming out, here's who he is. He's got to get out of the country. She calls the Secret Service. So we're thinking we're all good. She's thinking, I can get rid of this guy and end up with his girlfriend. So what happens is I get arrested. They swoop in, they arrest me. A few months later, Dateline does come out. It was called The Thief of Hearts. Becky had already been captured. Becky had been captured already a year before me.
Becky's already in.
She's already in. And the whole thing is based on Becky and an interview with Becky saying, oh, he's a horrible guy, he's manipulative, he did this, he did that. So that comes out. Then the U.S. attorney says they want to interview you. We want you to be interviewed. And my lawyer's like, look, they're going to make you look bad, but they'll consider it substantial assistance. They'll reduce your sentence. She said, you got to do it. You're basically done. So by that point, I go and I do the interview. Just before I'm sentenced, we're thinking they're going to reduce my sentence, give me a 5K1 and reduce my sentence. They say, yeah, it's really not enough. But you said you'd consider substantial assistance. And the U.S. attorney said, we did consider it, and it's not enough. Motherfucker. So I get 26 years. I go to prison.
Prison?
I went to a medium security prison. The day I got there, a guy got stabbed on the rec yard. Guys are getting beat down with locks.
Did you ever get beat down like that?
Never had a problem, ever. Only fight I ever had or issue I ever had was in the low. In the medium, I never had a problem. Within a few weeks of me being there, I started teaching the real estate class. The guy that was teaching it didn't want to do it anymore. He wanted to do legal work. So he asked if I'd do it. I started teaching it. Well, I had a great class. And it was the medium, so you could be pretty open with what you talked about. So I had a great class. Guys are walking around the compound. Hey, Cox, what's going on? Hey, man, how's it going? What's going on? Hey. I mean, huge, massive guys. Everybody's very happy.
Protecting you? Were they protecting you?
Well,
or
it wasn't that I needed to be protected. I didn't talk to anybody. You know what it was like? It was like being a non-enemy combatant. Like literally, there's stuff going on all around you. My head's down. I go to the unit. I go to work. I taught GED, and then I go and I teach the real estate class. Guys want to know about certain things. I'll meet you in the library. I can go over stuff with you. We take notes. We do scenarios. It lasts about an hour, once or twice a week. Everything's great.
Now, you've met some interesting cats in prison, though.
Yeah. Well, I was there for 3 years. Then I went to the low.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Right. So,
where did you start writing? When you started writing scripts? I think you wrote a, what did you say you wrote? You wrote a memoir, right? Did you write a memoir for?
I wrote a memoir for Ephraim Deveroli, which was the which was the character in
Jonah Hill.
Jonah Hill plays him in War Dogs.
Yep.
I wrote Deveroli's memoir while we were incarcerated.
How was he?
He was. Did you see the movie?
Of course.
And what did you think of Jonah Hill? What did you think of the character?
Psycho, sociopath, who was a great leader and a manipulator.
He made Deveroli look cuddly compared to Deveroli. Deveroli is cunning, super smart, super manipulative, super cunning. I mean, I wouldn't trust him for anything, but you can't underestimate him. He is absolutely extremely sharp. I mean, I wouldn't dare take that away from him. And the thing about him is that as vicious as he was in business, and that movie doesn't come close to it. By the time I was done writing that book, I liked him. He has an ability to get you really to like him, but I liked him because I thought we were a team. He's the kind of guy you want on your side. You definitely want him on your side.
Is he a tough guy or no?
He's not a tough guy like a brutal guy.
Yeah.
He's a sharp guy.
Does he have the piercing eyes like you or no? Like, is he like that as well or no? Because your eyes are on fire. Like, and typically a lot of guys that are brilliant, that they think a million things in their mind, their eyes are like the way you are. Was he like that as well or no? Intense?
I would say he's extreme. He's very intense.
Okay.
He's very intense.
On all the time?
On all the time.
Okay.
Always, yeah, definitely. He's definitely energetic, definitely. He's just,
You guys still keep in touch or no?
No.
So it didn't end well, the relationship?
Oh, no. He sued Warner Brothers over the film. They alleged that Warner Brothers had gotten a hold of the manuscript, which it appears that they looked like they did. There was they sued them. They went back and forth. There was a settlement. I sued Warner Brothers and Deveroli. We dropped the Warner Brothers suit. We sued Deveroli. We ended up settling with Deveroli, and even during that in negotiations, it's extremely tough. Extremely, he's a sharp guy. He's a sharp guy. So I wrote that story. I wrote a story about these guys called. The story I wrote was Oxy Rush. I sent that to a reporter with Rolling Stone. They ended up writing an article based on what I had written. It was called The Dukes of Oxy, and that was sold to New Line Cinema. I believe it was New Line Cinema. And it was optioned. You know, the film rights were sold. It was optioned. It's been optioned. They've renewed the option several times since then. Wrote a story about a guy named about a credit card counterfeiter, which is honestly one of the most amazing stories. Which is a credit card counterfeiter named John Boziak, who sold about $3.5 million in credit cards to the Russian mob. Been listed on several indictments. Secret Service was after him. It's just a phenomenal story. Wrote a memoir for him. What else? There's a guy named Marcus Schrinker that actually, in 2008, when the whole financial crisis was coming down, Schrinker took his airplane up, called in a distress signal. The windshield's imploded, I'm bleeding, and then he sets the autopilot. It's supposed to go out over the Gulf, and he jumps out, fake his own death. It's been everywhere. It's a huge story. And he ends up landing, and then 3 days later they catch him because the airplane runs out of gas about a mile or two before it hits the Gulf, because he didn't account for the fact that the door was going to be open, so it burns off a lot more fuel. And it ends up crashing into like a swampy area, and guess what? That whole plane was just destroyed, but the windshield was still intact. So they know immediately, this fucking guy's not in the plane. He jumped out, the door's open. I mean, he thought it goes down, the windshield's going to implode when it's the... Anyway, they catch him. So I wrote a book about him, Pathological Liar. That's a phenomenal story. And I've written about over a dozen, almost 20.
How is a guy like you
synopses.
who didn't do good in school such a good writer? Why are you writing? I mean,
Well, you know, I had a lot of help. Listen, you got guys in Coleman that are locked up, guys from NASA. You got lawyers. You've got guys with 180 IQs. I mean, these are brilliant guys. I write
you got
stories.
guys in from NASA. You got guys in from...
Absolutely. There are amazing guys that are in there. Listen, I'm not saying 90% of them are just drug dealers, low-level drug dealers. But there's a whole slew of guys that are super sharp. Lawyers, doctors. I never go to the doctor. You just go find Dr. Iglesias, and he's in B3, and you say, hey, listen, doc, my knee, it's killing me, and he does a little exam there, and he says, okay, you're going to stay off it for 2 weeks, and I can't go to the doctor at Coleman. These guys are like PAs. Nobody will hire them. I mean, so you don't get to the top of your field and end up working for the BOP. That's just not how it works.
Makes sense.
So
you just got out 9 months ago, 10 months ago.
Yeah, 7-8 months ago.
7 months. How do you feel being out? What are your plans now?
I feel good. I mean, I've got a website with all my stories on it.
How are you making money right now?
I'm working I've been hired to write a biography by a lawyer. It's kind of a vanity project. Super amazing lawyer. I've got 2 other books that I'm supposed to write. I'm selling books on Amazon, so that's some money.
Mm-hmm.
My bills are low. Listen, here's one thing I learned is I don't need a lot of money. I stay extremely humble. I literally live in someone's spare room. I drive a piece of shit Jeep. I spend virtually no money. My whole thing is I'm writing the stories. I want to be a true crime writer. I want to get them turned into documentaries, into films.
No desire to go back to the old life.
Absolutely not.
100%. No temptation.
Listen,
There
you
you
never
go.
know.
That's
Listen,
good.
you
You're being
never know.
honest.
What am I supposed
Yeah.
to say? The fact of the
You
matter.
never know.
Oh, listen, I told my probation officer, I said, I'm going to give it a year, and if things don't go well, I'm going to commit a massive fraud, and I'm leaving the United States because that's where I fucked up.
You told him that?
Oh, I told her. Listen, matter of fact, she even told me, this is fucking horrible, because she even told me, basically, she didn't say it, but she basically said, stop mentioning me in the podcast. Like, I don't want to be famous. Stop it. So, I mean, and she's the nicest person. She's extremely strict. She's concerned. But the truth is, things are going too well for me to fuck up at this point. At this point, I've got documentaries that are about to be made. I've got a series that is supposed to be made. I'm supposed to go to Los Angeles on the 18th and 19th. I'm to meet with a production company that makes films for Netflix and Hulu. They have like 4 of them on there right now. So things are going well.
The low interest rates doesn't turn you on right now?
It does nothing for me.
Positive.
Nothing for me.
By the way, let me ask you this, just from your experience, how long can this low interest rates last? How long can it last? I mean, this is all fake money right now.
I mean, I was just thinking every time I'll see like some E-Trade commercial, like one of these mortgage, like, you know, they're doing the mortgages, you know, over the internet or something. I just look at it, just like, it's so ripe for fraud. I'm just like, this is ridiculous.
That's what I was saying. That's why I'm saying that.
It's, you know, but
it's so ripe for fraud.
Yeah.
You watch Big Short. What's your first thing you thought when you saw Big Short? You're like, yeah, I kind of knew this was going to come up.
The Big Short was great, right?
So what'd you think about it? Just say, I know this.
Listen, in The Big Short,
yeah.
Do you remember when they come to Florida
yes,
and they meet with the mortgage brokers that are like, oh, I focus on like strippers.
Yeah.
Those were my brokers. Those were my guys. If you want to know who worked for Mac, used car salesmen. Those guys right there, they're buying strippers, they're nut jobs. They're going to conventions were just like that. Phenomenal conventions. I went to, like, I mean, you know, it was outrageous. And those idiots, those were the brokers that I hired. And they were good. You didn't have to be that great. So, you know, especially if you can go in and bring me the documents. I got all these documents. These two need to be changed, and I change them. You got a loan.
Did you watch Accountant with Ben Affleck?
The
Ben
Accountant?
Affleck? Is that what it's called? The Accountant? Yeah. Have
no,
you seen that or no? Well, you got to watch it.
I missed a lot of movies.
But you got to watch this one. That's right. You just got out 7-8 months ago. Go watch The Accountant, and then tell me what you think about The Accountant. Some tells me you may like it. I don't know if you watch it. Would you agree? I think he may like the movie. It's an interesting story. Tell us about the book before we wrap up here. Shark in the Housing Pool. Tell us what this is about.
That's the story of, from me, basically it's a brief account of, you know, it's a memoir. It's a memoir. Tell a little bit about my upbringing, what influenced me slightly. It's look, and then it gets straight into all the fraud in the mortgage company, and then it's life on the run, the scams. It's extremely. I mean, look, I think it's super interesting. Of course, I'm biased. I wrote it, so but everybody that reads it loves it. It's a phenomenal story. You've just gotten bits and pieces of it.
Here's
right
what
now.
Dateline says. So you just did this, kind of contradicts what you said. He was not some boring banker type in a gravy flannel suit, but a hip young daredevil who wore expensive clothes, drove flashy cars, and loved to skydive.
But that's Dateline. That's what they say. You know, that they always hype it up.
What'd you drive? You said a truck. What were you driving?
No, I mean, I've driven everything. I've driven Mercedes. I've had Mercedes.
No Lambos, Ferraris, Porsches.
No, because it's too flashy. I'm an Audi guy.
So you watch American Gangster? Did you watch American Gangster or no?
Yeah,
I've seen it. Kind of low key, and now we're there. Okay,
exactly.
Interesting. Well, I mean, listen. Obviously, today's story, I told you it's going to be a crazy story, and I was in the world with a lot of friends on mortgage. They were doing modification. You remember when modification came out? That was a whole opening for more fraud to be taking place. But if you haven't heard his story and you want to read more about it, click on a link below to order his book, Shark in a Housing Pool. Matthew Cox, thank you so much for coming out. I enjoyed listening to your story. You got a crazy-ass story. I got to tell you that. Phenomenal story.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Glad I was here. Glad I came.
What a crazy story to think about the fact that a Matthew Cox today could still happen because the system's not strong enough to prevent from that taking place. Obviously, he's got an incredible story, very entertaining storyteller, and seeing different perspectives of what he'd had. I want to hear your thoughts of today's interview. Comment below, as well as if you haven't watched my interview with Jordan Belfort, the first time he and I sat down together, I think you would like his perspective as well. And if you haven't watched the Mark Cuban interview I did, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, I think you'll enjoy this one as well. Either way, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. Thanks for watching, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.